There we go. The awkward pause before we start. Before we start anything, I have to show off my T-shirt, which says "Make It Rain," which got given at the FinOps Summit. So I'm not going to sit back that far every time, but that's what it says. I feel like it's important. I did some training for speaker stuff at Amazon, and they were talking about like what you wear is important, and about like if you have a thing that's your thing. And I was like, well, mine is just like funny T-shirts and like nerdy mugs and posters in the bottom of posters. And I got a if anyone out there is an MCU fan, I got a Lego gauntlet from Endgame or Endgame Age of Ultron, no, Age of Ultron, Infinity War, that you can make out of Lego that has like lights in it that I have to build over the bank holiday for my parents. That was my birthday present for last week, which is very on brand for me. How are you guys doing?
Steph, you're all about the culture.
Yeah,
I love it. No, I'm doing great. Early here, we're actually snowing Eastern Washington.
Oh my God.
Snowing in April. That's just par for the course, I guess, nowadays. But yeah, looking forward to it. And we're joined by Akhil. How you doing, man?
I'm good as well. It's 7:30, starting my day strong.
Oh yeah, well, I guess Biddle's the same. It's nice and almost the end of the day, and almost the end of my week because it's bank holiday which I didn't know you guys didn't do in America. It's bank holiday for Friday and Monday, which is lovely. So that's good. Okay,
let's get your taxes in.
Yeah. I didn't. Yeah, I'm just like, oh, it's taxes. Everyone keeps mentioning it, and I was like, oh, and apparently, obviously busy times of the year for a lot of people, so that's good. But let's get into it. So welcome everyone to the Keys to AWS Optimization, the show where we share stories, concepts, and solutions to help you unlock your spend at AWS. My name is Stephanie Gooch, and I am a commercial architect at AWS and a massive MCU fan. Biddle.
Hey everybody, Michael Biddle. I'm an architect here for AWS Public Sector, and I lead a team that focuses on cost optimization. And yeah, if it involves money, I'd love to hear about it. So that's my deal. What about you, Akhil?
Yeah, I'm Akhil. I'm a senior product manager with the AWS billing and procurement team. I own a couple of products in cost allocation and procurement space. Specifically for this show, we'll talk about cost allocation tax and cost categories. That's the cost allocation piece of it. I've worn a couple of hats. Like before AWS, I started as like a product design engineer for a power company, then transitioned to my product and marketing roles, and came to US, started up with AWS around 2 years ago in the same team, and I've been working on cost management space since then.
Cool, thanks. Welcome to the show. So, as you said, today we're going to be talking about cost categories and cost allocation tax. So the alliteration gets me tongue twisted. And as always, if you're watching live, feel free to pop questions, comments in the chat. We love to hear from you. Questions around these subjects or around anything to do with optimization. And if you don't catch us now, please feel free to put comments on our YouTube channel or email us at costoptimization@amazon.com. Pops there. And as a reminder, this is the last episode of this season. So not forever. Don't worry, we're back on the 19th of May. But this is going to be our last one. So keep up to date with our YouTube. If you follow us on Twitter or LinkedIn or anything, we'll see any post of information that comes up in between. But yeah, cost categories. So let's get into the starting talk. What are cost categories?
Yeah. We can think of cost categories as a rules engine, basically. Mm-hmm. Like that's something that allows customers to apply complex business logic to group their cost and usage. This is particularly from a customer's perspective. Cost needs to be understood and analyzed on the basis of like logics that make sense for them. It might not be like account groupings, which is how AWS is working on off of. So for instance, some customers want to know the total cost for a particular cost center, while some customers are interested in like the total AWS cost for their products. So cost categories basically helps in that aspect of it. It also gives like a set of dimensions, for instance, tags, the services, operations, charge types, and even other cost categories to define that grouping. So at the end of the day, like I can create what makes sense for me.
Cool. And no, that's a common challenge for customers to have to deal with this allocation. So some customers, so just like add some more context to it, I was on the phone to a customer just before this, and I've mentioned them before because I love this concept, what they call it, is they say that they don't have to deal with chargeback or showback because they have daddy's money, which I think is their words, and I've said it on the show before. And so someone else is paying the bill. But for a lot of companies, that's not the case. It's this chargeback element and the complexity of having this build that sometimes when they first start, maybe they just look at it from the Excel that comes out of the billing console. Maybe they start to go into it with First Explorer, and then if they look at the curve, they're like, whoa, this is a lot of information. How do we kind of group this together into those naturally occurring groups? Like you said, if there's products, if there's tooling, if there's teams, if there's cost center, how do we do this? So it's really important for businesses to take care of this. And I've kind of said that, but do you want to reiterate on like kind of why you should use these?
Yeah, and that's exactly the point or the pain that we're trying to solve, to build that. So cost management starts with cost allocation, right? And until you really understand what is costing you, or like what is my team's costing me, I really cannot go in and optimize it. So cost category is basically built around building that cost aware culture within your teams, so that like builders can build and innovate, and at the same time they're accountable for or they're aware of like the cost that they are incurring within AWS. And it adds value when, again, like as a business, let's say I am a CPO for a customer, and I have multiple products under me, and I want to know and make business decisions off of that. So what cost categories does is, one, the rules engine that we discussed. I can group my cost, but it does not stop there. We have a whole ecosystem around it. For example, I can set anomaly detection based off of that. So I'll know exactly when my product cost is like anomalous, or like I can have budgets based off of that. So I know my budget for a particular product, and I can set budgets off of that. I can additionally do cost explorer, use the cost and usage reports for additional analysis as well. So it comes to the point of like making business decisions based off of like particular groupings that make sense for me.
Yeah, I like this idea of, I didn't know you could do that with, I mean, for context as well, guys, me and Biddle were for this call, we're thinking, we haven't actually used it that much. We, when I was a developer, we used the account splitting technique, so we didn't have to do this. So we're going to be the same as you guys. We're going to be asking these questions. So I didn't know that you could do cross anomaly detection with it. I think that's super useful. It's super cool. Okay, cool. So how do you get started? So there's a nice blog I'm going to share as well. But do you want to explain to people how they get started with cost categories? What's the first step on this journey?
Yeah, it's fairly intuitive. It's on the billing console page. If you go to billing console on the left nav, you have a section called cost categories. If you go to cost categories page, you will have the option to create a new cost category. So it basically, once you go into the viz for the creation of the cost category itself, first step that you do is you define your rules, which makes sense for you. There are multiple ways to define that, and that's the part where we work with customers in understanding like how they should like slice and dice their cost, and how they should group it. They can do it based on, again, tax, cost allocation tax. They can do it based on accounts. They can group based on services, and they can go meta and group based off of other cost categories as well. I can discuss a few use cases of that as well later. But so that's the first step. Now that we've grouped all the cost, there's a section called Uncategorized Cost. So this will really bring visibility into the cost that you've not grouped, which is not something that you can do with, let's say, tagging, for instance. And you can use this cost for splitting purposes. Again, split sharing is a advanced feature within cost category, which lets you split the cost. Example, infrastructure cost or enterprise support cost into your different teams. And there are multiple ways in which we can do that as well. Again, I can go deeper into that. So yeah, once you do that, yeah.
No. Is that kind of, so was that shared infrastructure cost? So sorry, just to reiterate on that. So is that like, okay, I've got an EC2 and I want 10 different kind of groups of people to pay for that? Is that kind of how that works?
That's correct. So when I create a cost category, I can have multiple. It's similar to what you like tagging and tag keys and tag values. You can have cost category keys and values cost category key would be, let's say, cost centers. That would be the key. And I can have multiple values. Let's say like cost center 1, cost center 2, cost center 3 as the values. And when splitting, I can take the uncategorized cost or any cost for that matter and split it like using various algorithms into these different groupings.
Cool, nice. No, I think about back to my dev days and us having our shared resources like our Jira and our Jenkins and whatever those services are, and having to do that kind of cost allocation manually. So no, that's cool. All right, Bidlul, did you want to jump in here and ask about shared infrastructure?
Yeah, I mean, so I haven't used this a ton, but my experience I do have so far with it was a customer in public sector, and they have a lot of different linked accounts. You know, it might be a very common use case you have in your environment. You know, about 100 different linked accounts, right? And they could be called like linked account 1, linked account 2, for all you know. Like, so it's really kind of like, what is this? And so what I look at cost categories for in this example was we were able to map back on their internal, like, registration, like, okay, accounts 1 through 10 are for sales, accounts 20 for 30 are for marketing, and accounts 50 through 70 are for engineering, so on and so forth. And then what you can do is you then start to kind of put these into like an overall, think of like a Venn diagram, how you have your 3 circles and then you have a sort of an interlap. That's kind of my analogy for cost categories. So in this scenario, you're saying, this specific database, this RDS that's tagged as like, team infra, for example, that's shared by engineering, sales, marketing, and public affairs. So we're going to group that into its own cost category, and then we can split those costs either, even Stevens, allocated across every one of them the same, or we can create our own custom ratios based on what we define as the budgetary allocation. So it's a good way to just like kind of map it from that perspective. So you're not doing a whole bunch of work after the month in the CUR or other methods that can take you more time to clean up. So that's kind of how I approach it in my base view.
Yeah, definitely. What was I going to ask next? We mentioned this before. Well, you mentioned this, sorry, Akhil, before we started chatting about there's like 2 different types of cost categories, and there's hierarchical and what's the second one?
And inherited. So so hierarchical cost categories and inherited cost categories are advanced features within cost categories. So I can maybe give an example, right?
Yeah.
So you've I don't know, Bill, if you can share the screen. So hierarchical cost category is basically how you can use a cost category within a cost category, right? So I'll take an example from a recent reInvent video that that we had. In this example, like we have accounts, AWS talks in terms of accounts, right? And different personas within a company have needs different view of the company. For example, as a team owner, I need to know exactly what my team's cost is. But as a CPO, I would want to know like what are the costs from my 5 teams, right?
Right.
So in my first level, in this shared screen, we'll basically create cost categories based off of accounts. So I'll create like cost category called teams and create multiple groupings called team A, team B, team C, and team D within that cost category, right?
Okay.
And there'll be multiple teams groupings within my company. So after the first level, I can create a hierarchy based off of that. So in the second level, as a P&L owner or like a cost center owner or a CPO for that matter, I can group multiple of these teams into one cost category itself. So I'll know product A is team A and team B, and product B is team C and team D. So I can create that hierarchy and get the right level of visibility that I need based on my business requirements. We recently launched a feature called tagging for cost categories. So it is the purpose for tagging for cost categories to make sure that only the right stakeholders are getting access to this information as well. Because only I can set tags and access controls based off of on cost categories to ensure that only, let's say, a CPO is able to create or edit a cost category that is like on his or her level.
Okay, cool. Yeah, this makes sense. I understand this. It's similar to how some people use like business unit and organizational units, I assume, where you have these like groups of accounts. But then you can see this in your billing console, right? You can see this is where you can see this data.
Yeah. You cannot see it in billing console. You can see it in like all cost management tools, Cost Explorer, cost and usage
Sorry,
reports.
that's what I meant.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's like the big win, isn't it? That you can actually see this data in the billing information.
Yeah, that's where customers. So you have the rules engine, and like that's where customers play around, and you can you do all sorts of unique metric analysis. And I know you've talked about this a lot. Gross dashboard and cloud intelligence dashboard can import it into those tools and build all sorts of analysis based off of this. And this example is a bit like watered down because you can group not just based off of accounts. That's where we add value. You can say, okay, account all the tags X within a particular account is what I want in team A. So yeah, that's what hierarchical cost categories does.
Cool. No, that makes sense. That's good. And so the other, I think we wanted to talk a little bit. You've mentioned cost allocation tags. There were two more things we really wanted to cover. I wanted to talk a little bit about ABC, but also cost allocation tags. But I think you mentioned cost allocation tags then. So do you want to go into a bit what those are?
Oh yeah, cost allocation tags are also. Well, this is how I think about cost allocation tags. If you want to grow, if you want to know like in a granular level of like what my resources is costing, so I as a builder, I can tag my resources whenever I'm provisioning them. So for a resource tag to be considered as a cost allocation tag, you should go to the AWS billing console, and there's a tab called cost allocation tag. You need to activate a resource tag into a cost allocation tag. So once you activate that resource tag, it starts showing up in, again, all cost management tools, your Cost Explorer, cost and user report, anomaly detection, whatnot. That's where customers that's what customers use it most for. How I differentiate it from cost categories is like for some customers, cost allocation tag is enough, but for advanced users where they want to create like multiple groupings based off of like multiple dimensions, that's where cost categories come in. Yeah, that's my mental model around cost category and cost allocation tags.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, just everyone out there, I can't stress you enough the amount of times that I've been on a call with customers and they're like, we want to do chargeback based on like a tag. And then I say, that's great. You've got your CUR. Yeah, we've got a CUR set up, of course. Okay, have you enabled your tag? And they're like, what?
Yeah, and that's one important nuance as well. Like when I talk to customers who are like starting off in the like startups or like folks who are like migrating, they don't have a tagging strategy. At that point, cost of categories helps a lot because I can group based of other dimensions. Let's say again, like the dimensions that I mentioned, accounts or charges or service types. That is like additional value for folks who do not have like a right strategy in place already. That's the right starting point.
Yeah, definitely. Biddle, I mean, have you come across that where customers are like want to do chargeback and then they realize they haven't got any tags enabled?
I think that's all the time. Yeah. And tagging is one of those things where it's iterative, right? Unless you have like a really good automated policy in place with like config, for example, it's letting you know when you're out of compliance. One day you might be like, 90% tag compliance, for example. And then a month later, all of a sudden it's like at 60%. Like what happened? So you're going to have stuff that isn't tagged. And I really like this for that very reason. So linked account groupings aren't always perfect either, but it's another good fallback if your tagging is kind of like missing.
Yeah, definitely. And just a little side plug. This is very much similar to what I'm going to be talking about the London Summit. So if you want to come say hi, registration's open for the London Summit on the look up for the Cloud Ops talk is mine. But the cost allocation. So I urge you today to look at what tags you are using in your business and just go into that billing console and see, okay, have I actually enabled these? And I think another one that one of my customers was doing was they realized just by us doing that process and going and checking if it was enabled, they had this realization that they actually had 3 different versions of the tag, but it was all different cases and different formatting and different spelling and things like that. And they were like, oh no, we didn't realize. And so this is where we had to start doing things about looking at access account policies and stuff.
Yeah, that's another area. If you have multiple so that happens all the time. I didn't think of it as a feature until I talked to a customer. They've like have the same tag. Let's say Akhil, like small caps, like different formats of that. You can use cost category to bundle that as well. Like all the tags that you formatted differently, you can bundle all those together into like one grouping. That was like a huge learning when I was talking to customers.
Yeah. That's really cool. I didn't know you could do that. That's great. So yeah, if you can't do that, then that's awesome. Oh, do you want to mention how much it costs, Bill?
It is free.
That's right. Everyone wants to know, how much does this cost me?
Yeah, it's a free service. As it does not cost anything.
Definitely. If it's free, I feel like we should have a banner or something that like pops up, and I'm like, it's free, and then something. I should have an Alexa. She didn't pipe up skill that whenever I say it's free, like she does something in the background. I think that's a off series job. Okay, so we've got a question. So why are chargebacks associated with cost allocation tags? Is it because without them, it's harder to see the isolated costs of specific resources?
I'm not sure if I understood the question.
No, I would say it would be interpreted as. So you don't have to do why chargeback associated?
I think the confusion may be because like between resource tags and cost allocation tags.
Yeah.
Like cost allocation tagging is done specifically for the purpose of chargeback. Because like a resource tag will be converted to cost allocation tag only if you like make a conscious decision to activate it as a cost allocation tag. I'm assuming that's your question, but
let me speak to that too, because like so sometimes you'll see like when I meet with customers, they might say, no, we have our tags in place, and you look at Cost Explorer, for example, or the current they're not showing, and so there's a step where you need to activate those as cost allocation tags for the reporting purposes, and just strategically, you might not want to report every resource tag for cost allocation, depending on how your engineering team is splicing it for their needs that don't relate to cost. So it's just it's one of those things where we can get confused on it, but really we're giving you and the customer side the master level degree of if you want to see that reporting flow through the cost side and or like the engineering resource, like CloudWatch side type of thing. So just make sure though that you turn on those cost allocation tags. You'll see in Cost Explorer, and actually you'll see it in a billing console, your cost allocation tags, if they're turned on as active, and you can just flip it on real quick.
Oh, perfect. We've had okay, I understand. Note, so that's good. Thank you for answering that. And we've got another one come in. So, hey guys, I thought it was okay to ask. I have a small business, 5 developers, and I'm interested if there are any specific cost categories for small businesses. So, I'll jump in first with this one. I guess it kind of depends on what you're doing chargeback for, right? There are ones that we see when it comes to tags. There are tags that we often see businesses start with, which are things like name is a good one to have at the start, maybe cost center, maybe project, maybe environment, but it depends how you're set up. So if you have accounts per environment, there's no need to set an environment tag because it's just additional data. But I don't know if we could maybe use this to then jump into our customer stories. But Akhil, have you seen any that are common apart from the one you showed on the slide that we see a lot?
Yeah, I've seen. Again, it depends on like what stage you are in your financial cloud management journey. I've seen customers who are very organized, like they have specific accounts for dev and for production, and they can just use account as a grouping for cost categories. But in general, like what I've seen, like project is another one which I've seen often used by folks, so that they can like have a like grouping of what exactly costs per project. But I don't think there are any specific things I can recommend without understanding like the business cases or the business use cases itself.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. So what I'm going to do is, yes, I was going to try and find that. So this is a good kind of example of good tagging. I'll also jump into, I'll grab a blog post a little bit about tagging kind of structure. But yeah, it's figuring out what you need to do your job and what your developers need to do their job and what your stakeholders need, and getting that information set up in a way that's easy to manage. That's why looking at it from like a high level point of view, maybe than having to tag every single resource. So yeah, would really recommend kind of looking at what problem you're trying to solve.
Yeah,
Okay.
specifically, like just to add on that real quick, right? There, you're going to want to also marry some of this data up with your internal database information that really doesn't show on the AWS infrastructure side. So, you'll have specific names for how you categorize how customers are querying your product or doing searches within your app that maybe don't make sense to tag on the AWS infra side, but you'll still want to know how you want to match those up with your internal database information. So just like be cognizant, right? Like kind of the next little step is marrying the infra with the internal database information. So hope that gives you some perspective with this screenshot.
I've also chucked in this blog, which might give you a bit of a resource to take away to help. And as always, if anyone has asked, all these links will be posted on our YouTube channel underneath the video, so in the description, because some people have trouble finding them. Okay, yeah, so let's just move into, we've got 5 minutes left. Let's talk about some customer stories that you've seen where this has really worked.
Yeah, again, like the one that I've shared before was a story from Morningstar, which I think was a good example of how the basic and advanced features of cost categories were used. They have a structure in which they've grouped the cost based on accounts, and they've used hierarchical cost categories to build the right visibility for the right personas. I've worked with a lot of customers who are like starting off in their cloud journey as well. As I mentioned, like who are migrating to cloud or who are startups who are like like jumping into it and figuring things out. So I found those customers have the liberty to set their accounts early on without having a tagging structure in place, right? They can like make sure that their marketing team has like a different account, or like their X, Y, and Z team has a different account, and can use the features within cost categories to group their cost, and don't have to do like any additional work on top of that, because it's automatically taken into AWS cost management products. And they can make business decisions based off of that. Like you can forecast based off of that, and you can trend based off of that. So that information is really helpful in like knowing their cost. And it's particularly, I was talking to this customer who was really interested in knowing their unit metrics of like what is the cost of AWS for my product, and they used cost category data in finding that information. That's also some like another use case that I've seen customers recently moving to.
Great. Yeah, I think that idea that, and I guess I haven't thought about this before, is that well, I thought about the concept before, but not with cost categories, that people do get really bogged down with like tagging strategy sometimes when they don't need to. And especially when you do have things all like within an account. I think people are still like, oh, I need to tag everything, and then it becomes a pain, and then you're trying to hit this like 100% marker of like, I've got everything tagged. And sometimes you have to, if you are sharing resources, and you do need to do that per exact thing. But if you're not, then don't waste your time. I will always revert to the time I first started out in FinOps and cloud financial management, and was like, oh, we need a tagging strategy. We don't have a tagging strategy. And the director was like, Steph, we don't need a tagging strategy. We have everything and it counts. It doesn't matter. And I was like, oh,
yeah,
that saved me so much effort, because I thought I had to go through and try and tag every single resource, which would have been an absolute pain in the ass.
And these are not mutually. No, just saying these are not mutually exclusive as well. Like you can have both cost categories and tagging if you want to really dive deep into like resource level granularity and understand the cost. Tagging is your place to go. But if you're looking for that high level visibility to make again business decisions, I would recommend cost categories.
Yeah, just one last thing. Naming your formation templates, right? That's another thing I see customers do. Like we just go off of the name on the formation template used for the stack. That's our tag effectively. So, more than one way to get to the end goal.
Yeah, and don't forget, as a sort of caveat as well, isn't it, that there are user-generated cost allocation tags, and then there are Amazon ones. So they have different use cases. So the user ones will always have user. So it's always really confusing for customers in the car. They'll have like user name, but it doesn't mean username. It means user name. It means the user defined one and then name. So check that out. Oh, nice chimes ringing. Okay, we're at time. We can throw this last question really quickly. I'm using Amazon organizations 20 accounts that have consistent tagging, structure movement, or tools. So I guess
config.
Yes.
AWS config within organizations. So if you're using organizations, check out config and then create the tag policy that would apply in there, right? So you could say like if an EC3 bucket's created, it needs to have these 5 key tag value pairs, or else email the application owner, email me as the Cloud FinOps person that's been assigned to this, right? You can get that notification. That's probably the most common way and best way to try and scale that.
Yeah, and if you want to follow up with us guys in any of these questions, then feel free to email us at costoptimization.com. Thank you so much, guys, for chatting today. The last shout out, this again is our last episode until the 19th of May, so we won't be here for a couple of weeks. Me and Alex are guesting on AWS Supports You next Monday, so tune in for that. The splash link is below here, so you can go and sign up for that. And lastly, I'm going to be guesting on the San Francisco live Twitch stream at some point in the future. So if you're there, you'll see me maybe on Twitch, but if not, we'll catch you on the 19th of May. Thanks, Biddle. Thanks, Akhil. Have a great day and have a good Easter, everyone. And I'll see you in a month.
See you. Bye-bye.